In the early 90s, the horror genre seemed to be at a standstill. All the studios were producing were mainly horror sequels from tired old horror film franchises. There needed to be a shift, something new and fresh. All it took was a veteran horror director, Wes Craven, and a fresh new writer, Kevin Williamson, to breathe new life into the horror genre. Scream in 1996 was a horror film that was part satire, that poked fun at the horror cliches while paying tribute to the horror slasher genre. Scream was developed as a screenplay under the title Scary Movie by aspiring screenplay writer Kevin Williamson, after seeing a news story about a group of grisly murders by a serial killer called the Gainesville Ripper, and after he experienced a home invasion and break-in, became inspired to write an 18-page script treatment about a woman alone in the house who is taunted on the phone and stalked by a masked killer. The treatment remained as a short story while he wrote the other screenplay called Teaching Mrs. Tingle, a script he would sell and make into a feature film in 1999. Over 3 days, Williamson would develop a full script from his 18-page treatment, titled Scary Movie, into a full-length script and 2 separate 5-page outlines for 2 potential sequels, Scary Movie 1 and 2, to entice buyers for a potential horror movie franchise. He said that the main reason why he focused on the Scary Movie script was because it was a film he wanted to watch. His appreciation of horror films became evident in the script, which contained references to horror films from Halloween, Friday the 13th, to Prom Night. While he was writing, for inspiration he would listen to the score for Halloween. Williamson brought his script to his agent, Rob Paris, who said that the level of violence in the script would make it virtually impossible to sell. This would be proved wrong, because in June of 1995, his script had become the subject of a huge bidding war by a number of studios. Producer Kathy Conrad read the script and thought the script was exactly what the Weinstein brothers were looking for. Many of the major studios started to drop out of the bidding war as the price of the script increased. Williamson would eventually accept the offer of $400,000 from Miramax, plus a contract for 3 sequels and a 4th unrelated film. He chose Dimension Films, which he said would turn the script into a film. Director Wes Craven became interested in the script. Bob Weinstein would approach Craven early in the planning stages and believed Craven's previous work and experience in the genre would make him the perfect director to bring Williamson's script to the screen.
The first time I had Scary Movie, which was the title of the script at that time, come across my desk, at that time my director of development slipped it to me on a Friday and said, "You have to read this over the weekend because there's going to be a big bidding war next week and maybe we can get somebody to buy it for us." And I read it and I thought, wow, this is really powerful.
Craven at the time was already busy developing a remake of The Haunting, but wanted to direct something else instead of horror. He would reconsider and direct one more horror film for the fans. Originally, a number of directors were considered, including Robert Rodriguez, Danny Boyle, and Sam Raimi. Williamson said that they didn't get it. Production of The Haunting would fall through, and Craven was freed from any commitments. The film's title was changed from Scary Movie to Scream, after being inspired by the Michael Jackson song of the same name. Drew Barrymore was then signed to star in the film after she requested to have a role in the movie. The producers took advantage of her unexpected interest and would sign her to play the lead role of Sidney Prescott. Her involvement was believed to be instrumental in attracting other popular actors to the film, despite the film's small budget. Before filming would begin, Barrymore would be faced with unexpected commitments, which made her unavailable to play the lead, so she was cast in the smaller role of Casey Becker, which allowed her to remain involved in the project. She would feature in the most memorable scene in the movie, the opening scene, where she is brutally killed. This was considered a calculated risk, but it was believed that it would be so shocking and unexpected that any character could die.
This is something I've always dreamed to do, but I had no idea how challenging it was going to be until I got involved project.
It made it a whole different kind of picture right there. Drew Barrymore opening up a horror film and then dying, in 10 minutes. That was unprecedented. It was a calculated risk, and we didn't know whether the audience would even forgive us for that. They did, thankfully, but yeah, it was a very risky film in many, many ways.
For the role of Sidney Prescott, a number of TV actors were considered, including Alicia Witt, Melissa Joan Hart, Reese Witherspoon, and Brittany Murphy. Molly Ringwald was even approached, but turned it down, saying she'd much rather not be playing a high school student at the age of 27. Craven would approach Neve Campbell, whom he had seen on TV's Party of Five, and encouraged her to audition for the role of Sidney Prescott. He believed she could play the character because she was innocent, but could realistically handle herself in a physical and emotional confrontation. After the audition, she accepted the offer to play Sidney. Campbell loved the part, and it would be her first role in a feature film. For the part of Gail Weathers, they approached Brooke Shields, but it was Friends star Courtney Cox who would get the role. Melinda Clarke and Rebecca Gayheart were up for the role of Tatum Riley, but it was Rose McGowan who would win the role. For the part of Billy Loomis, the boyfriend of Sidney, Justin Whalen was considered, and he would take part in the audition process alongside Neve Campbell, but it was relative unknown Johnny Depp lookalike Skeet Ulrich who would win the role. Producers thought he was perfect for the part. Ulrich originally had starred in The Craft alongside Neve Campbell that year. David Arquette was originally approached for the role of Billy Loomis, but preferred the part of Dewey Riley. The naive, awkward deputy sheriff, he fit into the role perfectly. For the role of Stu Macker, Matthew Lillard was cast. He won the role after he accompanied his girlfriend to an unrelated audition in the same building. Lisa Beach, who was in charge of the casting, saw Lillard in the hallway and asked if he could audition for the role. Freddie Prinze Jr. also would audition for the role of Stu. For the part of Randy Meeks, a number of actors were considered, including Breckin Meyer and Jason Lee, but it was comedian Jamie Kennedy who would get the part, due mainly to his improvisation during auditions, which made director Wes Craven laugh. The creepy voice of the killer on the phone was voiced by Roger Jackson. Liev Schreiber would have a small part as Cotton Weary, and Henry Winkler appeared in the film as Principal Himbry. The Weinstein brothers wanted the film to be shot in Vancouver, which would save $1 million, but Craven was adamant about shooting in the US, as he wanted the town to look like a typical suburban all-American town. The location they decided upon was Sonoma County and the city of Santa Rosa and Hillsburg. The Santa Rosa High School would act as the location of Woodsboro High, but after the school board read the script, they rejected it due to its violent scenes against teenagers. The Sonoma Community Center then became the location of the high school. Kevin Williamson in his script had only described the killer as a masked killer, so the producers had to find the perfect mask for the killer. KMB Effects came up with a number of sketches for possible masks, but none of these designs suited. While location hunting, the location scout found a ghost face mask hanging from a post inside the house, used for the film Shadow of a Doubt. The costume and mask originally was going to be white, but they thought the costume would resemble the Ku Klux Klan costume, so they went for a full black robe and hood with the ghost face. Principal photography for Scream took 8 weeks, from April to early June of 1996, with a budget of $15 million. The first scenes to be shot was the shocking opening scene with Drew Barrymore, which took 5 days. After seeing the rough cut of the opening scene, the studio was content with Wes Craven to keep shooting. The final 40-minute house party scenes were shot over 21 nights. The final scenes were emotionally and physically exhausting for the actors, who were constantly covered in fake blood, over 50 gallons of blood, mainly consisting of corn syrup.
I was on the roof. My ankle was tied to the luggage rack. That was it. The stunt woman that was the driver, we had not marked through at half speed. The first take, she went so damn fast, the camera fell over in the van, fell backwards, and I went off the roof. I remember grabbing the windshield wiper blade with my right hand. I went off the front of the fucking van, literally.
The grisly and gory effects were created by Howard Berger, Bob Kurtzman, and Greg Nicotero at A&B Effects. For the stabbing effects, a retractable tipped knife was used. In one of the final scenes, actor Skeet Ulrich wore a vest underneath his t-shirt, which would protect him from the hard force of the retractable knife. During the stabbing scene, Ulrich was actually hurt when the knife stabbed a scar on his chest from heart surgery. The pain you saw in his face was in fact real. Rose McGowan, in her death scene, bruised her torso from being in the doggy door of the garage door, which would lift her up. Originally, her character's head was going to be crushed by the garage door closing, but it was decided that while stuck in the doggy door, with the garage door going up, her head would be crushed. McGowan enjoyed doing these scenes nonetheless. After the finale was shot, Wes Craven would review the dailies, but was not happy with the shots, which he felt were out of focus and unusable. Due to this, the director of photography, Mark Irwin, was fired and replaced by Peter Deming. Wes Craven spent 2 months editing the film. He showed the final edit to the classification board. They asked Craven to tone down the violent scenes, so Scream was stamped with an NC-17 rating, which was considered box office suicide. This rating would make Scream very hard to market. The producers thought that cutting these scenes would take away from the film's quality and story, because the opening scene had to be brutal to be effective. Craven had to show the board 8 different cuts before the film was approved, but luckily, after much debating, the MPAA eventually let Craven release the film the way he wanted. The score for Scream was composed by Marco Beltrami, who wanted to steer away from the usual horror conventions and approach the film more as a western. Scream was the composer's debut, and Beltrami would become one of the most well-respected film composers in film. Scream was an unexpected hit with critics and audiences on its release, even winning a string of awards. Scream was seen as a failure even before it was released, with Variety calling the film DOA. They would be proved wrong, as the film was a major hit up against the likes of Jerry Maguire. Scream inspired and influenced a whole new genre of films in the late 90s.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody of the MTV generation who finally gave some recognition to the kind of films that we all like to go see.
Scream marked a definite change in the genre, reinventing the horror genre while poking fun and paying tribute to the genre. The film also spawned 3 sequels and an MTV series. Screenwriter Kevin Williamson's career would skyrocket with the success of the film, working on a number of other horror films, plus a drama TV series called Dawson's Creek, and even breathed new life into tired old horror franchises. Scream was a definite game changer. My name's Jonathan, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and like what you see on my channel, please subscribe, and if you would like to become a patron on my Patreon, click on the link below.